Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Everything is Bad New Fangled Motion Picture Show.
Welcome one and all to another episode of the Everything is Bad New Fangled Motion Picture Show. I'm your host, Niall.
And I'm Nolan.
And today we're going to be reviewing the latest in that weirdo Wes Anderson's movies, The French Dispatch. Before we go into that, though, just want to let you know we will be doing a spoiler-free review. Not that there's really a whole lot to spoil. I mean, there's no twists and turns or like big reveals or anything. But just sort of yeah. But we'll do a spoiler-free review. Then we'll give you a warning before we go more in depth into it from there. But yeah, so Wes Anderson, if you're unfamiliar with his work at all, where the hell have you been?
His movies have a storybook quality to them.
Yeah, like they feel like looking at those like I Spy books. Remember when we were kids?
Yeah.
With just like this like
with just like all the just random stuff.
Yeah.
In the picture. And you're supposed to find certain items.
But there's like a sort of like surrealism to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like everything.
Everything's framed just so.
Most of the
everything has like 3 colors in the shot.
Depends on the movie, but like nothing. Like he doesn't use locations. It's like all built sets
and some models
and a lot of model work. Yeah. And like everything is a very like sort of surreal. And like kind of like a stage play in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, with
that's a good analogy for it. Yeah.
And everything is always like just framed just so like he
very symmetrical. Like a lot of shots are very symmetrical.
His movies are always in a 3:4 aspect ratio.
Yeah.
That's a standard old television aspect, like square.
Yeah. I mean, but
aspect ratio.
It is, but in this one, there were some parts where there was like 2 frames adjacent to each other on the screen, or where the frame was like moved to one side and then like the other side had some text or something.
Yeah, but the frame was still.
But yeah, the frame was always 3:4.
Yeah.
To give you an idea, 9:16 is like an HD. Right, 9:16. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a standard. No. Yeah. 9:16. That's a standard like HD, like 1080 aspect ratio. So, and that's what like most things are these days. Most television and screens.
Yeah. So, like 3:4 is for every 3 whatever units tall, it's 4 wide.
Yeah.
So it's almost square, like 9:16. Wherever 9,
right?
Unit inches high or whatever, for lack of whatever, it'd be 16 wide.
Pixels in the case of like television or like computer monitors and HD
right.
TVs and stuff. But yeah, so it's very stylistically like discernible. Like you can look at something and immediately tell it's Wes Anderson. Like there was that H&M commercial he did
on the train.
Yeah, it
was a Christmas.
A lot of stuff he does with Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody's in a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and I remember the very first opening shot. It comes up, and we were just like, "This looks like a Wes Anderson movie." And then it comes up as like directed by Wes Anderson. And we're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, that made sense.
Yeah, or it was at the end or something. Like just immediately, we were just like, "This looks like a Wes Anderson movie."
Mm-hmm.
So
like a lot of symmetry in his shots too. If you have like a person on one side, they'll have someone on the other, or just everything's sort of like balanced and
like the camera's always like squared off in the room. Like whatever wall is in the background of a room is always like the camera's like perpendicular to it. The way it's oriented.
So the camera rarely moves unless it's gonna like quickly rotate like 90 degrees to show something else. That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Or it'll be like a tracking shot, like side to side or up and down, but still staying, no tilting or turning. It'll just like moves.
Or very few in the way of dolly shots too.
Yeah, it's so enough with his style. It's a very unique style, and it's a lot of the entertainment of the movie is the style,
Yeah.
but also the dialogue in his
Yes.
movies are always quick and dry, and
And bizarre,
yeah,
like outlandish.
yeah,
Like the kinds of things they say are things that could only be said in a movie. You know.
right. But no one ever finds them strange. Like everything is said just totally straight.
Right.
Like nothing. It's like no one in the movies ever like laugh. You know, like
Right.
someone makes a joke, but it's a very dry joke, and the audience laughs, but no one in the movie ever does.
Right. It's always delivered as if it wasn't a joke, though.
Right, and it's unnatural dialogue, really.
Yeah.
Uh, so anyway, this is more of that.
It's very much like
It's
it's like, I mean, every one of his movies is very stylistically him, but this is like someone trying real hard to be Wes Anderson and like almost took it too far. Like some of it feels very like, I don't know if he's like feeling more established in his style or feels like he can get away with more of that kind of stuff or what, but
maybe. But this movie is a series of vignettes tied together in the framing of each segment is a story in a magazine.
the final issue of this
Final
magazine.
issue of the French Dispatch. It's like the full title is like the French Dispatch of the Liberty, Kansas Evening Sun.
Yeah. And like there's this whole rambling, well, that's rambling, but like there's this whole like intro that goes along with it to explain that, like, you know, how the magazine got started and all that. And
Basically, this guy whose father owns a newspaper in Kansas City.
no, I think
No,
it's just Kansas.
somewhere in Kansas.
Somewhere in
Yeah,
Kansas.
somewhere in Kansas. Father owns a newspaper. He goes to study abroad in Europe and winds up staying in France and starting a magazine that's
It's a travel.
it's a yeah well
It's a
meant,
travel.
it's meant for the people back in Kansas to get some culture from
Yeah,
Europe.
I remember also in the movie though, like they specifically mentioned that it's like the geographic center of the United States, supposedly.
Yeah.
Like just really emphasizing like just the utter middle of plain nothing, like nowhere that it is.
Right. So Bill Murray is the editor of this magazine. He's the son in question, and he's been living in France for years now, running this magazine, and so it goes. You know, he's trying to put together the magazine, so he goes to each of the writers, and he's like, "Okay, tell me about or give me the story that you've worked on for this issue," and then you get the little short film that's the whole story behind that story, and then moves on to the next ones and everything. So, yeah, and that's how it's just this series of short films essentially that are all tied together by Bill Murray going to each of these writers to get their story.
Yeah, and I mean, this movie has such a cast. Like Nolan was talking about before we started about how he's gonna have to omit people because he can't put this many tags, like meta tags, on a YouTube video. It just seems like everyone who has ever worked with Wes Anderson is more than willing to work with him again, and like everyone wants to work with him. It seems like.
So I wonder if like he's just that likable a person, or people just they must just enjoy
Or they just
doing the movie.
it's like art house enough that you can feel like a real artist for a time, but also like mainstream enough that it doesn't feel pretentious, maybe. But to give you an idea, like Benicio del Toro, Adrian Brody are in a lot of his stuff. Bill Murray's in a lot of his stuff.
Owen Wilson is.
What's his name? Edward Norton.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe. Like these are all people who are in
They're
his stuff
regulars in this.
regularly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's just like, yeah, the cast is super stacked. To the point where like it was enough that, I mean, I see a new Wes Anderson movie is going to come out. I'm probably going to go see it. But when we started seeing the posters, we didn't see a trailer until like a few weeks before the movie came out.
I didn't ever see a
And
trailer.
And the posters were in the theaters for like 2 years though, because like COVID bumping everything back.
Was it that long?
Yeah, I remember seeing it. At the theater that's now our current theater. And because at the time thinking like, oh, I haven't seen this poster at our normal theater, which hasn't been our normal theater for a year and a half. So, yeah, it's been a while. And so like just seeing all the cast that was listed on this poster in the theater, though, I was like, even if this wasn't Wes Anderson, like I'd go see it just because of this cast.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like each story, each vignette in this could like just be its own little thing. Like literally the only thing tying any of these together is that they're all telling the story to Bill Murray.
Right.
So,
and they even the credits even break them up by story.
Yeah.
Break the actors up, so like, this short had these actors.
Right. So, and it's a fun movie. Like there's a lot of stuff that makes you laugh because it's like
it's absurd.
It's absurd. Just like bizarre situations. There's some parts that are really interesting where it's like meant to be a freeze frame, but like it's all the actors just holding still, and like
you see them like wobble a little bit,
right? And there's like, there's one part where someone's like blowing a fire extinguisher, and you can tell it's just like a wad of cotton coming out of this thing, as the smoke or as the propellant or whatever coming out of this fire hydrant. It's just, it's just really, pretty interesting. And again, it sort of lends to that, like you were saying, that stage production feel, a stage play feel.
Yeah. And if nothing else, Wes Anderson movies are just fun to watch. Like,
yeah,
even if you like don't like whatever story they're telling, it's just entertaining to look at. Just everything's so meticulously crafted in his movies that you got to appreciate just the visual of it as much as anything else. But then, yeah, a lot of the dialogue is just like real quirky and like just this dry sense of humor throughout. And sometimes you're like, am I supposed to be laughing at that?
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just, if you're a fan, I'm sure of his movies, I'm sure you'll enjoy this.
Yeah, and like, if you have seen any of his movies, but you aren't like immediately aware of who he is and like his style, you can look at this and just go, wow, this in a lot of ways feels like I'm watching the Grand Budapest Hotel or whatever. No.
Yeah. His previous movie was Isle of Dogs.
Is that his last one?
Yeah.
Yeah. His stop motion, he's done 2 stop motion movies, right?
Yeah, that and Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Right, and those, I mean, again, like everything's framed just so, and what's interesting is how much those also feel like his live action stuff, because it's all these like meticulously crafted sets and like some models and stuff anyway.
Yeah, this and Grand Budapest Hotel both used a lot of model work.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so this is sitting at a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb right now. I'd say that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
Definitely was entertained for the whole hour and 48-minute runtime of this movie. So I recommend going to see it. And like, please do, because it's bombing in the box office.
Yeah,
It's getting great reviews. Like, people are liking it,
but no one's going to see
but no one's
it.
going to see it. I think it just, for one thing, I think the advertising was not. I don't think there was enough of it.
Right. I think. But also, it's just kind of a.
It looks weird.
It
Like
looks weird.
the
It's a
the
weird-
ads don't. Yeah. So anyway, you got anything else to say that's not spoiler? On that?
No, I don't think so.
All right, all right. So this is a spoiler warning, but again, like I don't know that there's a whole lot to spoil. I think like probably like one of the best examples to me of just like dialogue that's not delivered as a joke that is funny and is a joke is when Adrian Brody's talking about, he has that art exhibit that he's arranged and paid for, painted by Benicio del Toro, and he's talking about it, and I forget who it was, said something like, interesting that he chose to do it as a fresco, and
He's like, oh, what?
and Adrian Brody's just like talking about it, and he goes, why did she say fresco? Like, if you don't know what that is,
That's where you use pigment in plaster to basically plaster the painting to a wall.
like The Last Supper, right?
Yeah, The Last Supper was done that way.
Probably the most famous example.
Right, people don't realize that because you only see that photo, but it's on a wall above an archway into the dining room of a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, because all you ever see is the photos of it, right? People assume it's a painting, but no, you mix pigment, the paint, into the plaster, and then you plaster a wall with the colored plaster, so it's permanently there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this shot that looks like it's looking through the painting. And he's just like, why did she say fresco? And he runs up and starts touching it. And like like that was just, if you know what that is, that was just a really funny, because you just immediately know what happened.
Right.
And it just makes it really funny.
Well, they're also talking about like he's selling his uncles on this guy's artwork, and like, what is it's modern art. I don't like it. You're not supposed to.
I don't understand it.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah, so it's that whole sequence was, I don't know, I'm trying to think, like, I don't think any of them were like really weaker than the others in any significant
that
way.
one was definitely the longest one, I think.
Yeah.
That one took the longest to tell. I think the first one with Owen Wilson, where he's doing the travel.
Oh, that was definitely the shortest.
Definitely the shortest, but also had like the fastest pace, like between jokes.
Yeah. Like that whole sequence was just funny, but it also was sort of. It was sort of
introduction to that city,
right? Yeah, it was sort of a. It was almost like a
primer,
prologue.
Okay,
It's almost like a prologue to the rest of the movie.
One thing I thought was kind of weird. So there's one story that focuses a lot around Timothée Chalamet's character, and it's like these college students and their little revolution, because they're French, are gonna have a revolution, right?
Right, but they don't really have anything to revolt over.
Right. What they're revolting over is the fact that like boys aren't allowed in the girls' dorms because they want to be in there having sex with each other, but they're not allowed to be doing that. But what's weird is so many of the characters revolving around that story only speak in French. But Timothée Chalamet, who speaks French, never utters a word of it. It's all his dialogue's in English. And so they have these conversations back and forth where someone's speaking French and he's speaking English, and they understand each other perfectly.
Well, like that sequence, some of it felt like they were speaking French because they felt like they were supposed to be speaking French. Because like there was like one part where the girl in that sequence, I forget who she was played by, cause she was like a less known actress, right?
Lena Kudry.
Just bumped the mic. There was a part where like she couldn't think of the word or something, right?
Maybe.
Trying to remember.
She's an Algerian actress.
So probably speaks French.
Yeah, very pretty. I've seen everything. Like everything on her IMDb profile has been foreign films.
Ah.
So I don't know her from anything, but.
But yeah, so it's yeah, I don't think there was I couldn't point to any of these sequences and be like, that was the weak one or or any that were like the best. Like I think they were all quality
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Wright's one was pretty good too, where he's supposed to be writing an article about a chef
who works for the police department.
Right, but in the middle
Nescafé.
Yeah. Nescafe or something.
Nescafé.
I think the R is silent.
No, it was definitely not.
Oh, they were pronouncing it?
Well, they might not have been pronouncing the R, but it definitely wasn't Nescafe.
Anyway, but in the middle of like researching for this article where he's supposed to be like sampling the chef's cuisine and interviewing him and stuff, the police chief's son gets kidnapped and he just gets drug along in this whole thing to like go find and rescue the police chief's son, and so it like gets down to the end of it
by Edward Norton. He's kidnapped by Edward Norton,
right? And he gets down to the end of it and he's like, I thought you were supposed to be writing about a chef. Bill Murray says to him, and he's like, I got shot at, can't you appreciate that? I want to write about it.
Yeah, like that. Again, like that was just like these absurd situations that are so common to Wes Anderson movies. And like it's like, it's a little different because like, some directors and writers are known for putting their characters into these crazy, bizarre situations. Like Guy Ritchie does it a lot, but the characters in those situations are aware of just how crazy the situation is.
Yeah, no one in Edward Norton. I was thinking of Edward Norton in that segment.
No one in a Wes Anderson movie
understands how crazy the situation is.
Right. They all just like that's just
how it is.
It's just how it is. And that sequence was definitely like a strong example of that.
I love just like this off the cuff, like, oh, and call out so and so, make sure he's limbered up, and there's this strong man that just like joins the hunt for the
because the police chief is calling in like the local hunting club, like amateur hunting club, to be sharpshooters, and then like the mountaineering club to rappel down from the roof, and
in this Zandau style like strongman.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an incredibly entertaining movie. And like we were saying, if you're a fan of Wes Anderson, you're gonna love this movie. It's very much a Wes Anderson movie. So,
what was the name of the series of frescoes? It was like 7.
Oh yeah, it was like
7 portraits of Sylvia and load-bearing walls.
It was like 7 load-bearing portraits.
Yeah, Simone was
Simone.
Like
yeah,
it was like.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'll have to like look and see. Maybe you could like put it on the screen if we figure it out or something. But yeah, it was like when they kept saying the name of the collection together, and I was like, that's like, is that just a weird name because it's Wes Anderson? And then when you find out, like, no, it's because they're frescoes. Like,
yeah, and they're on a load-bearing wall.
Yeah, that made it like it just made it so funny. So, but yeah, you got anything else to say about this? I mean,
another line that made us laugh. Owen Wilson and his segment, he's talking about like the local church choir, half drunk on the blood of Christ, beat like
Yeah, like chasing people or
like
something.
assaulting elderly or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, nothing to add.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely recommend going to see it. So the next movie we're gonna review is gonna be Eternals. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And then after that, Ghostbusters, I believe, and then House of Gucci. Right, we're seeing that, right?
Yeah.
And then Spider-Man: No Way Home, and Matrix Resurrections, and The King's Man. That's what we got finishing out the year, assuming nothing gets delayed again. How heartbroken are you going to be if The King's Man gets delayed again? Like, just...
I'm going to be pretty upset.
I don't know where. Yeah, and so assuming that it hasn't moved, also Morbius is in January. They announced they bumped back a bunch of Marvel, like canceled 2 Marvel movies that they hadn't named and bumped some stuff back, right? Like last week or week before.
I think
They
it was
announced
more
that?
than a couple weeks ago, but yeah.
It's pretty recently though.
Yeah.
But I would assume that IMDb has what is currently the release date for Morbius. I mean, we're seeing Morbius trailers every time we go to the theater now, so I assume it's gonna happen. And then, yeah, like we've got Death on the Nile in February. We've got that supposedly that Uncharted movie comes out in February, and I was looking at it, I was like, this trailer that's like the first trailer we've seen that feels like it's full of unfinished effects shots. February feels ambitious when I look at that, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen the trailer though, so I don't know. I mean, I can't say. You were telling me that like the effects look unfinished.
Yeah, like I hope they're unfinished anyway.
Well, it's a really big budget movie though, is it?
I thought Sony was dumping a bunch of money into it. I could be wrong.
Maybe, yeah.
And I'm one of the people who was fine with the casting too. Like I was still excited for this movie. Like it doesn't bother me that Mark Wahlberg and Tom Holland are main characters. So, we'll see, man. That trailer came out and did not
not impress you?
What's the word I'm looking for? Starts with an A. Or eases my fears.
Alleviate?
No, not alleviate.
Alleviate?
No. A-S something.
Assuage?
Assuage. Did not assuage any sort of concerns I might have had about the movie. So we'll see. And that's what we got coming up. If any of that sounds of interest to you, you want to hear us ramble on about those movies, come back and check that out. We're probably going to have a lot to say about Eternals because it's a Marvel movie. We always have a lot to say because you always got to discuss like how it ties into everything else. And it's a long one. And it's, by all accounts, not very good. So we're probably going to have a lot to say about that one. So yeah, come check that out when that comes out next week. And then check out our other reviews. Last one we did was Ron's Gone Wrong.
Yeah. And
we did another Timothée Chalamet movie. Dune. So go check that out. Not going to tell you what we thought of Dune because that's what that's for.
But between these 2 movies, I may be a Timothée Chalamet fan.
Yeah,
I've only seen 2 movies with
him.
him.
I had not heard of him when they announced the cast of Dune. I was like, who the hell is Timothée Chalamet? And I went and looked at him. I was like, well, he looks like Paul Atreides. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, check out those reviews though. Check out our other stuff. And I guess until next time, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Toodles.
Thank you.